The 16th BRICS Summit began in Kazan on October 22, 2024. It's reliably known that this summit will last for 3 days. Despite the absurd statements of many Western leaders that Russia is allegedly isolated due to unprecedented Western sanctions, the heads and representatives of more than 30 countries of the world arrived in Russia for this summit. Moreover, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres also arrived in Kazan to attend BRICS Summit. Because of jealousy and anger, the foreign ministries of many Western states, including Ukraine, have already condemned the UN Secretary-General for his decision to come to Russia to participate in the current summit. In particular, the Kiev authorities officially stated that Antonio Guterres allegedly caused significant damage to the reputation of the United Nations by his visit to the BRICS Summit. Against this backdrop, it can be assumed that this is only the beginning of mass hysteria in Western countries in Ukraine, and that we will witness such absurd statements many more times. Meanwhile, Western experts have already called the 16th BRICS Summit a triumph for Russia, and a crushing defeat for the West. In particular, the French historian and sociologist Emmanuel Todd bluntly stated that the West had suffered a crushing defeat in the confrontation with Russia. According to him, the West has been claiming for decades that Russia is a gas station country with only 1.5% of global GDP. However, despite such statements, the United States, with the help of 50 countries, has been unable to defeat Russia for 3 years, not only on the battlefield in Ukraine but also in the economic war. Emmanuel Todd noted that the West has done everything to isolate Russia. However, the arrival of so many world leaders at the BRICS Summit in Kazan showed the West that most of the world's countries want to be with Russia and not the West. According to Emmanuel Todd, the West needs to admit defeat as soon as possible and start building a dialogue with Moscow, taking into account Russia's national interests. Well, my friends, seeing such statements by Western experts, it seems that there are still sane people in the West who can think rationally and quite rightly. However, the main problem is that the so-called leaders of Western countries will never admit defeat in the fight against Russia. Moreover, after they realized that Russia could not be defeated from a military and economic point of view, they began to blackmail and put pressure on the governments of those countries that expressed interest in mutually beneficial cooperation with Moscow. In particular, in the last 30 days alone, Washington, London, and the European Union have imposed sanctions against government officials of 5 states that have demonstrated a desire to get in tight with Russia. Against this backdrop, the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, once again stated the need to create a new financial system that will finally deprive the United States and other Western countries of the opportunity to use the US dollar and economic sanctions as a weapon. In particular, Vladimir Putin said that Russia, together with other BRICS countries, is working hard to create a financial system independent of the West. And this financial system will become an alternative to the Bretton Woods system. This financial system will be developed and implemented based on the BRICS New Development Bank. According to Vladimir Putin, the new development bank will become a financial institution for profitable lending to all BRICS countries experiencing economic problems. Thus, the BRICS countries will receive a source of lending that will allow them to develop their economies even in the face of severe Western sanctions. The new development bank can be compared to the IMF's role in the Bretton Woods system. However, unlike the IMF, which works exclusively for the interests of globalists in Washington and London, the new development bank is interested in solving the problems of all BRICS member countries and the development of their economies. In addition, BRICS strives for decentralization and the presence of several centers of power at once. Unlike the globalist system of the unipolar world, where the main priority was the economic development of only Western countries, the BRICS, with its system of a multipolar world, promotes the principle of economic development of all BRICS member countries. Simply put, the stronger the BRICS countries are, the more profitable it is for the whole association. Thus, it becomes clear why every year, more and more countries want to become BRICS members. At the moment, the BRICS controls about 40% of global GDP, as well as a quarter of world exports. By the end of 2024, the total volume of the BRICS economy will grow by 4%, which will exceed the indicators of the G7 countries by 1.7%. And these figures are growing with each new quarter. Experts already call BRICS the world's most powerful club, which has already significantly outstripped the G7 in terms of its economic capabilities. Meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund has published its October prospects for the development of the world economy. According to this report, the share of Russian GDP at purchasing power parity will be 3.55% in 2024. Thus, Russia took fourth place in the world's economy in terms of purchasing power parity. According to the International Monetary Fund, Russia has overtaken Japan in this indicator, whose share of GDP at purchasing power parity will be only 3.38% in 2024. The first three places in this ranking were taken by China, the United States, and India. In addition, the International Monetary Fund admitted that by the end of 2024, Russia's GDP will grow by 3.6%. However, Russia has denied these data. The Russian Ministry of Economy has officially announced that Russia's GDP will increase by 3.9% by the end of 2024. In addition, the International Monetary Fund recognized that the economy of the Russian Federation remains the largest and most stable in Europe. Earlier, Vladimir Putin instructed the government to make Russia the world's fourth economy by 2030. In addition, Vladimir Putin instructed to reduce the poverty rate in Russia by 12%. Moreover, Vladimir Putin also ordered to reduce imports of foreign goods by 17%, calling on Russian enterprises and factories to independently produce all necessary products for the country, including cars and electronics. Against this backdrop, Polish President Andrzej Duda regretfully admitted that due to the stable development and strengthening of the Russian economy, many Western entrepreneurs began to return to Russia again. According to him, Western sanctions have played into Russia's hands, making the country's economy independent and more flexible. Thus, even the most ardent Russophobes regretfully admit that the next decade will be marked by Russia's victories and prosperity.